Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation. Today, we have a legend in the ground transportation sector, Mr. Brett Barenholtz. He's the CEO of Above All Transportation, Boston Car Service, ETS, and Maine Limo. And most importantly, he's also the president of National Limousine Association. Brett, it's a pleasure having you tonight in the show. How's your day going?
Everything's going well, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Let's do it. So again, for all the listeners, buckle up. Brett is a legend in the transportation industry. I was looking into your LinkedIn. I believe you started Boston Cab in 1987, and I was born in 1987.
Well, I didn't know I was going to come on the show and get shamed for being old. So, I initially got out of college. I was an accounting major, and I sold securities. Back in the days when it was literally the boiler room, it was even pre-Wolf of Wall Street. That was like the run and gun crazy thing. You just learned how to get on the phone and dial, and literally would call 500 people a day, and we dialed phones. They didn't have push buttons, so it's really dating you. And then I had an opportunity at Boston Cab, and I went in there and bought the company in 1987.
Wow! But how did the opportunity came about, and how was it when you first started the
It
company?
was an industry that my father was in, and my uncle and cousin, and I used to go there on Thursday nights or something and do their books. And after 2 or 3 years out of college, my cousin kept saying to me, "You're never going to own Merrill Lynch." So I ended up going in with him for about a year and just spending, you're a Boston guy. I spent maybe 2 years in every building in the city of Boston getting thrown out for solicitation. And then I would just go back the next day. And we had about 400 clients in Boston. And it turned into about 3,000 clients in Boston. And then we bought the company. I bought it with my cousin. And we had approximately 500 of the 1,800 cabs in the city in our association. And there were about 2,000 different drivers. And we owned that for about 10, 11 years and sold it. And so sold it like in 98 with a person who bought us out. I started a car service called Boston Car Service.
In '88.
I mean, in 98. We bought it in 97, sold in like 98.
Got it. So Red, let me interrupt you if I may. So how how was it when you were getting kicked out of the buildings? First of all, how old were you? Because I also remember soliciting door to door throughout the financial district. So I respect that hustle and that grind, and most important, that tenacity and resilience.
I got out of college 21, so I was like 23, 24, 25, just like you did it. And if people don't know on your podcast, Dan is quite the hustler himself. He is quite the sales guy, and his company does very well too. And we're both Boston guys. So respects to you too.
Thank you.
It was, you just went in buildings. It was before 9/11, so you didn't have to, show a badge or this or that. You would just beeline right into the elevator and go floor to floor. And well, I went after all of the law firms and advertising firms and PR firms, because this was just around the time when fax machines were coming out, and legal documents used to get sent around the city everywhere. And we would do package work also for them in taxis, but it would go directly there. So we started a package company that was done through the cabs, and it was a good run. It was a good run.
Awesome. So fast forward a little bit. So you mentioned you exit the Boston Cab business, and then you purchase Boston Car Service.
No, I started it,
Okay.
like everybody else. One
Got it.
car, no work. How do we figure this out? So, I was still running the cab though. So that was the main business, but we knew who all the I knew who all the clients were in the city of Boston. They all, at the time, were using, like there was maybe just one other company in the city or two other companies, and one was Boston Coach. So they were all using Boston Coach, and they didn't know that we had a premium level. So it took some time to build that up, and it was you know, a lot of fun building that up.
Yeah. And how was it like Dumb and Dumb Fries? You started from the ground up. Um, I'm assuming with no money, and just is it working day 24/7, just a ton of grind, barely any technology? Did you focus on a specific sector?
It was the kind of thing when you have one car, you gotta figure out how to keep that guy busy, and then when you have 2, you gotta figure out how to keep that guy busy. So, if we needed to do packages with that driver to keep him busy, he would do it. If we needed to give him some kind of cab work, which is like, lower end work, we would do it just to keep those drivers happy. And we just, quickly went up to 5, 6 vehicles, and then it turned into a real business. So,
Always.
but, what we do is 24/7 all the time. And I was listening to someone the other day on, getting interviewed, who was it? The guy from UFC, and people, he said, were always telling him that, "I'm gonna do my own business, and I can work when I wanna work and this and that." When you do your own business, you don't have that option. You're on all the time, 24/7. You're never on vacation.
Totally. That is very well said. And thank you for sharing that, because as I looked at you and as I share my story, I always tell folks that there's not an overnight success, right? It took me about 10 years to start making profits at DPV. So, all right. So let's fast forward a little bit. The company grew from there. You started acquiring Boston, ETS, Maine Limo, and you became the president of National Limousine Association. So help us understand, what is your state of mind when it comes to the industry? What are the main challenges that you see overall with the industry?
What happened is I got very serious about the business just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and I ended up merging it with Above All, and I bought it out from the other partner, merged it with Above All, who Kevin Cronin, great partner, and then we've been off to the races, and then I decided to get a little bit more involved politically, which I'm gonna get you more involved politically too, because you need to have friends in our industry that are in the legislature, because things come up all the time. Everybody's trying to take our space. Everyone's trying to take our curb space at the airport. Everyone's trying to figure out ways to eliminate our services, and you have to fight for them. And we have a client base that is more on the C-suite executive or wealthier people, but they're the ones that fill up the front of the airplane, which is where the airlines make all their profit. The majority of their profit is made in the first class and business section, and most of those people are our clients. So we need to have um, a place where we have curb space and we don't get eliminated from this stuff. So it's that you fight for this space. And we're in Massachusetts and Boston to do things locally, and we're in DC doing things nationally. There's there there's a lot of things on the horizon that we have to be careful of, and we have to fight for it. And the NLA is a great organization, the National Limousine Association, that gets involved in national issues and sometimes regional or state or city issues, including congestion pricing, which is going on in New York right now.
I agree. But based on your business and based on the years that you have, with a wealth of knowledge in this industry, what are your biggest concern with the industry?
The concern is you're always fighting to, as I said a second ago, have curb space at airports. You're always fighting to not have your insurance skyrocket even when you have a perfect or a great record. So insurance is a big problem right now. That's a concern. We're working on that on the national and regional level. We're working on, even congestion pricing. That's a concern because if New York will be the first city in this country that has a congestion pricing fee, and basically it's a tax on our clients. And if they're going to keep taxing our clients, they might eventually tax them out of using our services. So they try to push it off as something that's about the environment when it's really just a money grab to help the MTA in New York, which is a horribly run organization, continue with a downward spiral of blowing billions a year. And this is just a money grab. The good news is that the governor of New York, she took this off the table last year after we did our day on the Hill. And I'd like to take full credit for that, but we really can't because there were a lot of industries pushing against us. And they didn't want to lose the elections because they put another tax on New Yorkers and people to get into the city. You're trying to promote New York City, and then, of course, you're taxing everybody that's trying to drive into the city because you have a subway system that is hemorrhaging money. And they're trying to pass this off as being environmentally friendly, so you have less cars in the city. And that's definitely not why they're doing this. They didn't even do an environmental impact study. So we're trying to fight things like this. She put it back in place starting January 5th. Fortunately, Trump has said that when he gets in office, he will get rid of that. So he is not for that. And that's a positive. But, everything down the road, we're going to talk a little AI and cars and self-driving vehicles and things of that nature.
Totally. Yeah, so you brought a great point. So when it comes to innovation, AI, autonomous vehicles. Well, let's start with AI. How has AI either helped you or created a challenge for within your business and within the experience for riders?
I think AI helps us with, as you know, with your buses, with cameras, with distracted driving. If a driver's not looking at the camera, all of a sudden he gets a message, "Hey, you're not looking on the road." So there are things like that that are incredibly great. There's other things that helps out with documents. You can easily use chat or something and say, "Hey, can you help me write this kind of document?" And that helps. AI on the vehicle side, just even knowing for your maintenance, there's a lot of ways to diagnose problems using AI. From the driving side, it's interesting to see where that goes. When you will actually have in big cities, and when I say big cities, I'm talking about the top 20 cities in the country that have tons of traffic, all sorts of people jaywalking all the time. And when will it be better for people to not have a chauffeur that is trained, that helps them with their luggage, that is there It's going to be interesting when you have 50 vehicles pulling up to 75 State Street all at 5 or 6 p.m. to pick up, and there's no drivers, so they all just jam the street. It'll be very interesting to see how that resolves itself. And I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen in the near future. I think that might have a runway of 5 to 10 years in major cities, but I do see AI helping out with maybe campus shuttles or just shuttles that do the same loop over and over. But I think cities pose certain challenges that are a little bit different than if we went from a suburb of Boston to a suburb of New York, where it's mostly highway driving and things of that nature. I think it's going to impact trucking a little sooner than just taxi and black car and even our services. But our services are, we're on the super high end of stuff. We get people that want to be catered to. They want to make sure that someone knows how to go. If there's some traffic this way, they know a better way. They're not just going with the flow. There's a million times that I'm in following my GPS and it starts taking me the craziest way.
Correct.
I've been in Ubers and Lyfts and whatnot in the city because Dan and I, if you don't know this, we live in the same building in mostly during the winter. But if you jump in an Uber or a Lyft, they will take you from the back bay. They will take you as far out as you can go, like down to literally Roxbury and loop around that way instead of just come straight down Boylston Street, because it might show that there's, a 10-second advantage going the other way, even though they're going 3 miles out of the way on a 2-mile trip.
Um,
It's just, so some AI is good, some isn't, but you look for the stuff that helps you. I think AI might be able to help us with insurance down the road and things of that nature.
yeah, that is an excellent point. And when it comes to flying vehicles, do you foresee in 5, 10 years that we're going to be having flying vehicles, and is that going to have an impact on our industry overall?
I don't know. I would love to take one myself. If they have them, I'm certainly gonna get one. Uh, but a lot of what we do is we're in the dirt. We're on the ground floor of how everything works. We have mechanics. We have, people checking out the cars, cleaning the cars. A lot of people think that if you have a self-driving vehicle, it's just gonna go on its own and fill itself up with gas and take the trash out of the back seat and wipe the windshields, even though the AI can do it. The other issue with that is different parts of the country. A lot of these systems do not work in ice and snow. A lot of them don't work, or they don't work well with ice and snow. They don't work as well with rain. So I'm assuming rain it has to work all right in, but the conditions in the Northeast part of the country are not like Arizona or California, where the conditions are a lot better. And I even think Florida has some issues. Arizona does too with the heat. Sometimes it might just get too hot for some of these sensors to work properly.
Got it. And when it comes to transitioning to electrical vehicles, Brett, what are your thoughts? Based on my experience, we had a hard time so far implementing the electrical vehicles and making sure that the consumer, whether it's the direct client or us acquiring the equipment, that is easy to, number one, to use the equipment, because we had a lot of service failures with the electrical vehicles and buses. But overall, just the cost of entry is so expensive that neither the client wants to pay for the electrical bus, or neither the supplier like us that are willing to invest, 2 to 3 times as much as a regular cost of a regular alternative fuel buses. So just wondering what your thoughts are when it comes to electrical vehicles, the current state and future state.
I think it all depends on what part of the country you're in. California has infrastructure, and it has very good infrastructure right now. the rest of the country, and I'm sure there are certain pockets that are a little better, but the other 49 states, they don't have that yet. The infrastructure is just not there to make it as simple as, 5 minutes away is another charging station. And friends of mine that run all electrical fleets, they train their drivers, don't wait till it's empty, just when you have a little time between a job, go here, go there. But you and I both have shuttles that are running 24/7, or you have things that are running 12 hours in a row, then pretty much nonstop. And even our sedan drivers and SUVs, a lot of those, they pick, they drop, they pick, they drop. There's really no time in a 10-hour period or a 12-hour period. So those are going to be a challenge, because a friend of mine who has a company in France, he uses electrical vehicles. And he said by, 9, 10 in the morning, because a lot of the vehicles go out at 4, 5, 6, they're sending out runners to switch out the vehicles
Right.
because they're already running out of charge and they need the vehicles to keep running. And then, of course, you have to be very careful. Your clients aren't going to be thrilled if on your way to New York or on your way home from New York or something like that, you have to stop for 25, 30 minutes for a charge. So there is that. The other thing that you don't know a lot about is the delivery. A lot of times people will tell you how much it costs to charge your vehicle, what the electricity costs. But when you look at your electric bill, there is a charge for the electricity, and then there is a deliverable charge, which almost doubles the cost of what the electric is. So it's very interesting to find this out. From the environmental standpoint, yeah, it makes sense. And we're going to jump into it as soon as we can when we feel the infrastructure's there. And we're working right now locally with Logan Airport to get some level 3 charges into the limo pool. And we just had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. And I don't want to say begging, but we're working with them to say, hey, this has to be something that we have here so we can get it rolling. And there's probably, 50 or so vehicles, I would say 50 vehicles locally that are electric.
Thank you. That is very well said. What is the best business advice, Brett, that you have gotten so far?
The best advice that I can give right now is your connections, the people that you network with. It's extremely important to have a great network. It's extremely important to just continue to meet people and network with old friends, new friends, people where you live, people in your industry, people that are maybe on the fringes of your industry. I never thought that knowing people and being friendly with people was a business kind of thing. That it would lead to business.
Yeah.
And your network means so much in this industry, and, who you are and how you stand behind your product too. So I would say network. One of the things in our industry, if this is people in our industry watching it, get involved in a 20 group, get involved in a local association, get involved in something where there's another 20 people in your space. We all compete for a lot of the same business. There's tons of business out there. We all compete, but if you are ethical, if you can play in the same sandbox and work with your neighbors. We were all a lot stupider before COVID, where I had a fleet that was good for me on our busiest weeks and months of the year. I don't need that fleet for the entire year that I'm paying insurance, making car payments, doing all this stuff. I need some other people in our market, other companies that I can, say, hey, I have a huge group in this week. Can you help me? And then we work together. But, stay lean, but work with other people, and be smart about your expenses. Because unfortunately, I'm hoping we never see it again in our lifetime, but COVID, that wasn't like 2008 when maybe 30 to 50% of your business went away. That was 90% plus. It was challenging for people to stay in business. We probably lost, 20%, 25% of the industry at that time.
Totally. That is a really good nugget of wisdom right there. So I appreciate you sharing that. And when it comes to the best books that you have within your toolbox, what are the best books that you recommend to the listeners?
You know what? There was a book I read decades ago called Who Stole the Cheese? And that's a cool book that I think anybody in business should read. The other thing is I read a lot of books that are, about some extremely successful people, how they did it, about Bezos or about
Yeah.
Buffett. And it's just interesting to see how they've done things and they didn't start out like that. So to see that. But there's another book that just came out in the last year called The Manager's Handbook by a friend of mine who's a professor of entrepreneurship in Stanford. And his name's Dave Dodson, but it's called The Manager's Handbook. It's just a very, very cool book that I would highly recommend for anyone to read.
Okay. Well, dude, perfect. Well, Brett, again, thank you so much for being generous with your time, with your wisdom. I respect you a lot for the companies that you have built and that you still operate. Much admiration and respect for you. How can the listeners stay in contact with you and with your company? I know we're gonna put in the episode notes, but is it better through LinkedIn, your website, anything that you would like to share?
Have them just go to my LinkedIn. I definitely pop onto that once a day. And I would highly recommend people going on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, Facebook in our industry, a lot of people are in Facebook and Facebook groups, but LinkedIn has a lot more business people on it that are non-industry people. And highly recommend that.
Perfect. Again, Brett, thank you for being generous with your time. Sorry.
Before I get off, I just want to say Dan's listeners should know he's quite the athlete. He's a gym rat. I see him in the gym. So thank you, Dan. Appreciate jumping on your podcast.
Thank you, Brett. Have a great night, listeners. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye-bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed the episode and got some valuable insights. If you're curious to learn more, head over to the resource website at dpvtransportation.com, where we got a ton of useful resources and tools for you to stay ahead of the game. And before we wrap it up, I want to invite you to book a free guest admission consultation or a consultation about your ground transportation program with us. Just register on our website is a fantastic way to see how your fleet is doing or how your overall program could be improved. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on the Future of Ground Transportation. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Ground Transportation. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the show.